Good evening. This is Nick, and this is your next gaming news. I know, it's a shocker. I'm bringing this back. I thought I could maybe do this format a little bit better, so I thought I'd bring it back and see how you guys like it and see how it fares. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started because a few interesting things have happened in the last week or two. So, the first thing we're going to look at is the fact that Nintendo is hinting at its next console release after the Switch. Now, I know tons of people on YouTube have been hinting Switch Pro, Switch Pro, Switch Pro, Switch Pro, oh my god, new console, oh my god, 4K. Apparently Mr. Bowser, and yes, that's his name, his last name is Bowser, has said that as of November they have sold 68 million units. This hardware is in mid-life. The Nintendo Switch is at the midpoint of its life cycle in March. The Nintendo Switch will turn 4 years old, which means it's safe to assume Nintendo's marquee console will be around for another 4 years or more. A powerful revision may be introduced at some point, but Nintendo right now is denying the Switch Pro is in the works. So, there still is some hope for a Switch Pro to come out. The Switch itself is not going anywhere for the next couple of years. Now, Nintendo has not been averse to, in the past, having made multiple console revisions through its lifetime. The 3DS showed that by going from the 3DS's clamshell, to the Lite, to the XL, to like the XL Plus during its lifespan. Will Nintendo do that here? I don't know. Too many SKUs is shown to be a big problem. It's been a problem for the Wii and the Wii U. Having multiple SKUs, it has been a problem for the Xbox Series because they've had so many SKUs that people haven't really known which one was which. Speaking of Microsoft, let's go ahead and move to them next. They are actually calling for a drifting lawsuit to be taken out of court. Microsoft has currently been under the gun recently in the class action lawsuit over drifting Xbox controllers. Many people have had issues with, in the past, with especially the Elite controllers having drifting issues and having other problems. The lawsuit allegates that the drifting issues are caused by a design flaw in the controllers, which claims Microsoft is aware of and failed to disclose to customers. In October, an amended complaint was filed, adding that additional 7 plaintiffs demanding a jury trial to address the allegations against Microsoft. Now, a new motion by Microsoft is called the Washington Court to compel arbitration, which the corporation argues in accordance for services agreement the plaintiffs agreed to when they purchased their Xbox controller. So basically, they want to try to get this out of court. They want to try to sell it for a smaller term and get this off their plate because they are working on a few things. One of which is they are working towards trying to get these consoles built quicker. Reports have come out from Game Rant that last year saw the release of the console, and now the console is still much desired and selling out almost as soon as they come to market at retailers, nearly 2 months after launch. However, Microsoft is working to address the problem. Speaking for Major Nelson, Xbox head Phil Spencer claimed that the company was doing everything it could to ramp up production of the Xbox Series X and its similar sibling, the Series S. However, it appears that there's only so much that can be done, as there's still real-world circumstances that are causing the production pipeline to struggle to keep up. I would imagine this is our continuing, ongoing, in and out of lockdown, people being sick, COVID, blah, 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 blah stuff that is causing everybody all sorts of hell with keeping up with manufacturing. The next thing that Microsoft, again, is doing, which is kind of interesting, let's get rid of that. The Xbox Series X survey asks if they want PlayStation 5 DualSense features in the Xbox controller. The survey says, are you happy with your Series X console? Microsoft certainly wants to know. Want your suggestions on how it can improve the overall experience. An Xbox console experience survey has gone out to customers who purchased either the Series X or Series S, and it reveals that some potentially exciting news as the company's future plans for the system come to light. While the usual set of standardized questions appear, such as rating your satisfaction level, since owning the console, there's also some very specific and interesting topics that stand out. Where to buy Series X at retailers checked, where to buy stock updates and info, best controller games. Chiefly among these is a question on whether or not Series X feels next gen, which has been the criticism of some users have leveled at both Xbox consoles since release. What's more surprising, though, is that the question where Microsoft asked were the users aware of the features of the PlayStation controllers that they wish were on Xbox controllers. It's also specifically asked which features the users wanted to see. The new Xbox wireless controller is a refined and improved version of the previous gamepad. And that's true. It takes a lot of the features of the Elite that were really good, such as the D-pad and things like that, and added it to the new controller. It's actually a very solid piece of hardware. However, they didn't do much more than minorly tweak the controller. So this is a step towards potentially doing that. Now, what form that'll take, no one knows yet. I don't know if they're going to be able to add that into existing hardware. Chances are not, because they'll probably have to add new DualSense motors in there to be able to get the feel quite right if they want to do that. So it means that you, as a consumer, may have multiple options as far as which Xbox controller you want. Do you want the base controller, which is likely going to be cheaper than the DualSense version of the controller that would have the more improved haptic feedback moving forward? Whether or not games are going to start to use that and whether or not that investment is up to you, the consumer, whether or not you would want it, I would assume. Microsoft has been very big on making sure that previous platforms, devices, and electronics and things like that work moving forward. I would imagine they're going to stick to that stance and just give you more options, which is always good for you. The next thing is that PlayStation has actually taken a hit. I know, it's been all about Xbox. Well, now let's take a look at PlayStation. Apparently, their brand is in decisive decline in Japan, this research firm claims. Apparently, it's been called by far the lowest launch sales of any Sony home console in the region, the PS5. Basically states that it sold 240,000 units in Japan in its first 6 weeks of availability, less than every other PlayStation console during the same time frame, barring the PSP. In the comments translated, it's claimed that the figures show that Sony's not taking Japan seriously, and that the PlayStation brand is in decisive decline in the company's home country. The total sales are by far the lowest in the history of the PlayStation home consoles, the analyst wrote. If these were to continue, lifetime sales of the PS5 would probably end up being less than half of the PS4. Keep in mind, this is just in Japan. He added, based on the graph, it only real sense is that Sony has plans for success in the Japanese market. Research Institute can't see it. They just can't see them succeeding the way they're going right now. Apparently, Japan, being very Japan-centric in their mentality, has basically decided that the PlayStation 5 is not focusing enough on Japan itself, and therefore has started to wane its interest on the actual system itself. That's kind of interesting, because Sony, since they first came out, has pretty much dominated Japan. They took out the SNES very early on. The Nintendo 64 didn't have much of a way of being able to keep up with them, and they pretty much just took everybody to task and stayed on top of the market. Every time Microsoft has tried to go into the market in Japan, they have traditionally struggled incredibly hard to keep up with Sony. So to see them in this kind of decline is quite interesting. It'll be curious to see what they do moving forward to try to reassert their dominance in this market, or whether or not they even care, given the more global scale of gaming and how much money there is to be made outside their shores. Last but not least, the Intellivision is up again. Yes, Intellivision, the console you may or may not have heard about, looks like it is going to come out this year. President and CEO Tommy Tallarico has shown a new video. He did about 12 minutes. I will put a link in the description of this video if you find anything you see here interesting. This is a retro-focused console focused on Intellivision games from the late 1970s into the mid-1980s, where it was most prominent. It did continue support until right around 1992, when the system was finally roughly decommissioned. They did a lot of firsts with this system, and it was a very interesting and quirky system. It was very, very popular at the time. Maybe not quite as popular as the ColecoVision, but the ColecoVision was significantly cheaper than this system. This was a pretty premier system back in the day. Tommy has been working day and night for several years now to try to revitalize this brand and bring it to market. So what we have here is Tommy himself, and I'm going to mute this so you guys can kind of hear me talking about what's going on with the system, the update, going through the boot up cycle so that you can actually see the hardware boot up and see some of the games. Now, this is interesting because he goes into a few things here. Right now, he's basically just talking about ramping things up and where things are going. So as we move along in the video, he's basically showing his setup, where the system's connected, where he's recording everything like that, so everything's on the up and up. Right here, he's going to show you some of the dev kits that they're getting ready to send out to various different developers so they can get to line. You can actually kind of see the actual remotes there. So as we move along, you can see they just hit the button and the console boots up. I know, this is nothing revolutionary. However, it's important to note that a lot of people said that they wouldn't get this far. So now the system's booting up. You've got the Running Man, which is basically the icon for Intellivision. It was sort of like their little mascot. It's a really well animated stick figure kind of guy. So the system will come up. They do a little bit of showing you the interface here and how the games are laid out. Now keep in mind this OS is in preliminary features. Let me make this a little bigger. It's in kind of a preliminary mode, so this isn't the end-all be-all of how this is going to look and feel when it's done. It's mostly like a rough draft of how this is going to look. They still have some work to do on the GUI. As we move on, you can see that they move into Astro Smash, which is a very popular game from the Intellivision itself. They go ahead and load into the game and they show off how the controller works. You can see there you've got a better image of the controller. You can choose various different ships, then have them land, and then you're immediately playing the game. The reason this is interesting and the reason it's kind of important is the fact that we have rarely had a fourth console player in the market and one that was trying to take it as seriously as a main console developer. There have been plenty of retro consoles come out that just play on being able to do retro games, but there have been very, very few that have been released that have tried to reimagine those games and modernize those games for the current day and age. This is an attempt at a small group of people trying to do a startup to try to do this very self-same thing. Now, if you guys are interested in this, I will be putting some links in here so you can watch this video. You can see this. This is a very easy to play, very easy to pick up system with a controller that fits both lefties and righties, and you can hold it up. You can see he's turning the controller there. I think it's probably going to be a really neat console to have. I think it's going to be very interesting, and the more interest that they can get, the better off the console market's going to be, because basically it means that more people are playing more games and they have more options. However, with that said, I will leave this here and let you guys go about your day. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode of the gaming news. Hopefully I'll be able to bring more stuff like this to you in the future. I will hopefully have this out tonight. It is Wednesday, January 6th. Hopefully I will be uploading this relatively soon so you guys can peruse it to your heart's content. And let me know if you guys like this format, if you want to see more of this format. Until next time, I'm going to go ahead and sign out. This is Nick. This has been your gaming news. And until next time, happy gaming.